Hello, is this the police station? Yes, what can I do for you? I'm calling to report about my neighbor, Jack Murphy. He's hiding marijuana inside his firewood. Don't quite know how he gets it inside those logs, but he's hiding it there. Thank you very much for the call, sir. The next day, 12 police officers descend on Jack's house. They search the shed where the firewood is kept. Using axes, they bust open every piece of wood but find no marijuana. They sneer at Jack and leave. Shortly, the phone rings at Jack's house. Hey, Jack, this here's Floyd. Did the police come? Yeah. Did they chop your firewood? Yep. Happy birthday, buddy. A priest offered a nun a lift. She got in and crossed her legs, forcing her gown to reveal a leg. The priest nearly had an accident. After controlling the car, he stealthily slid his hand up her leg. The nun said, "Father, remember Psalm 129? The priest removed his hand, but changing gears, he let his hand slide up her leg again. The nun once again said, "Father, remember Psalm 129? The priest apologized. "Sorry, sister, but the flesh is weak." Arriving at the convent, the nun sighed heavily and went on her way. On his arrival at the church, the priest rushed to look up Psalm 129. It said, "Go forth and seek. Further up, you will find glory." An old guy goes to his doctor for his physical and gets sent to the urologist as a precaution. When he gets there, he discovers the urologist is a very pretty female doctor. The female doctor says, "I'm going to check your prostate today, but this new procedure is a little different from what you have probably heard or are used to. I want you to lie on your right side, bend your knees, and then while I check your prostate, take a deep breath and say, 99. The old guy obeys and says, 99. The doctor says, "Great. Now turn over on your left side and again, while I repeat the check, take a deep breath and say, 99. Again, the old guy says, 99. The doctor said, "Very good. Now then, I want you to lie on your back with your knees raised slightly. I'm going to check your prostate with this hand, and with the other hand, I'm going to hold on to your to keep it out of the way. Now take a deep breath and say, 99. The old guy begins. 1, 2, 3. On Monday morning, the teacher walked to the blackboard and noticed someone had written the word penis in tiny letters. She turned around but couldn't find the guilty face. She quickly erased it and began her class. On Tuesday, she was again greeted with penis on the blackboard, written in larger letters. She looked around in vain for the culprit and then proceeded with the day's lesson. Every morning for the rest of the week, was written on the board in larger and larger letters, and each time the teacher furiously erased it. By Friday, she'd had enough. "That's enough," she sputtered. I can't believe this. Monday morning, I expect an explanation for this behavior." On Monday morning, the teacher confidently entered the classroom and found on the board, "Don't you know, the more you rub it, the bigger it gets?" Mr. Smith wanted to become a teacher in the worst way, but the only job he could find was as an instructor at an all-female college teaching sex education. His wife was a very jealous woman, so Mr. Smith decided he would tell his wife that he would be teaching a sailboat class at this college so that she would not get angry. He was very happy, and for months all was well. As fate would have it, one day in the grocery store checkout lane, Mrs. Smith overheard a group of girls standing in line behind her talking about college and their instructor, Mr. Smith. The girls went on and on about how great this Mr. Smith was at teaching their class. The cashier handed Mrs. Smith her change and said, "Have a great day, Mrs. Smith, and thank you again." One of the girls in line heard the cashier and asked Mrs. Smith if she was related to the Mr. Smith that was teaching at the college. Mrs. Smith replied, "Yes, he is my husband." Well, that set off a torrent of accolades about how knowledgeable Mr. Smith was about the subject matter he was teaching, and about how he got the whole class to discuss their fears about learning the subject. Well, Mrs. Smith was taken aback by what she heard from these girls and replied, "I don't know how you find him to be so gifted at teaching you this course. You know he only tried it twice in his life. The first time he tried it, he got sick, and the second time his hat blew off and he just quit." Little Billy and Lucy are only 12 years old, but they know they are in love. One day they decide that they want to get married. Billy goes to Lucy's father to ask him for her hand. Billy bravely walks up to him and says, "Mr. Smith, I and Lucy are in love. I want to ask you for her hand in marriage," thinking that this was just the cutest thing. Mr. Smith replies, "Well, Billy, you're only 12. Where will you two live?" Without even taking a moment to think about it, Billy replies, "In Lucy's room. It's bigger than mine. We can both fit there nicely." Still thinking this is just adorable. Mr. Smith says with a huge grin, "Okay, then how will you live? You're not old enough to get a job. You'll need to support Lucy." Again, Billy instantly replies, "Our pocket money. Lucy gets $5 a week, and I get $8. That's about $52 a month. So that should do us just fine." Mr. Smith is impressed Billy has put so much thought into this. "Well, Billy, it seems like you have everything worked out. I just have one more question. What will you do if the two of you should have little children of your own?" Billy just shrugs his shoulders and says, "Well, we've been lucky so far." Mr. Smith no longer thinks the little shit is adorable. A priest was called away for an emergency. Not wanting to leave the confessional unattended, he called his rabbi friend from across the street and asked him to cover for him. The rabbi told him he wouldn't know what to say, but the priest told him to come on over and he'd stay with him for a little bit and show him what to do. The rabbi comes and he and the priest are in the confessional. After a few minutes, a woman comes in and says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." The priest asks, "What did you do?" The woman says, "I committed adultery." Priest, "How many times?" Woman, "3 times." Priest, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box and go and sin no more." A few minutes later, a man enters the confessional. He says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." Priest, "What did you do?" Man, "I committed adultery." Priest, "How many times?" Man, 3 times. Priest, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, and go and sin no more." The rabbi tells the priest that he thinks he's got it, so the priest leaves. A few minutes later, another woman enters and says, "Father, forgive me for I have sinned." Rabbi, "What did you do?" Woman, "I committed adultery." Rabbi, "How many times?" Woman, "Once." Rabbi, "Go do it 2 more times. We have a special this week, 3 for 5. Well, feeling a little rough around the edges, it all started with boys' night out. The other night, I was invited out for a night with the boys. I told my wife I would be home by midnight. I promise. Well, the hours passed, and the drinks were going down. Way too easy. Around 3 a.m., knee-walking drunk, I headed for home. Just as I got in the door, the cuckoo clock in the hall started up and cuckooed 3 times. Quickly, realizing she'd probably wake up, I cuckooed another 9 times. I was really proud of myself for coming up with such a quick-witted solution, especially when I was crocked, in order to escape possible conflict with her. The next morning, my wife asked me what time I got in, and I told her midnight. She didn't seem perturbed at all. Whew! Got away with that one. A few minutes later, she said, "We need a new cuckoo clock." When I asked why, he said, "Well, last night our cuckoo clock cuckooed 3 times, then said, Oh, shit. Cuckooed 4 more times, cleared its throat. Cuckooed another 3 times, giggled, cuckooed twice more, then tripped over the cat and farted. She hurried to the pharmacy to get medication, got back to her car, and found that she had locked her keys inside. The woman found an old, rusty coat hanger left on the ground. She looked at it and said, "I don't know how to use this." She bowed her head and asked God to send her some help. Within 5 minutes, a beat-up old motorcycle pulled up, driven by a bearded man who was wearing an old biker skull rag. He got off of his bicycle and asked if she needed help. She said, "Yes, my daughter is sick. I've locked my keys in the car. I must get home. Please, can you use this hanger to unlock my car?" He said, "Sure." He walked over to the car, and in less than a minute the car was open. She hugged the man and, through tears, said, "Thank you, God, for sending me such a very nice man." The biker heard her little prayer and replied, "Lady, I am not a nice man. I just got out of prison yesterday. I was in prison for car theft." The woman hugged the man again, sobbing, "Oh, thank you, God. You even sent me a professional." A mother and father take their 6-year-old son to a family nude beach. As the boy walks along the sand, he notices that many of the women have boobs bigger than his mother's, so he goes back to ask her why. She tells her son, "The bigger they are, the sillier the lady is." The boy, pleased with the answer, goes to play in the ocean but returns to tell his mother that many of the men have larger things than his dad does. She replies, "The bigger they are, the dumber the man is." Again satisfied with her answer, the boy goes back to the ocean to play. Shortly thereafter, the boy returns and promptly tells his mother, "Daddy is talking to the silliest lady on the beach, and the longer he talks, the dumber he gets." A drunk man who smelled like hell sat down on a subway next to a priest. The man's tie was stained, his face was plastered with red lipstick, and a half-empty bottle of gin was sticking out of his torn coat pocket. He opened his newspaper and began reading. After a few minutes, the man turned to the priest and asked, "Say, Father, what causes arthritis?" The priest replies, "My son, it's caused by loose living, being with cheap, wicked women, too much alcohol, contempt for your fellow man, sleeping around with prostitutes, and lack of a bath." The drunk muttered in response, "Well, I'll be damned." Then he returned to his paper. The priest, thinking about what he had said, nudged the man and apologized. "I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to come on so strong." "How long have you had arthritis?" The drunk answered, "I don't have it, Father. I was just reading here that the Pope does." After their 11th child, a Kentucky couple decided that was enough as they could not afford any more kids. So the husband went to his doctor and told him that he and his wife didn't want to have any more children. The doctor told him that there was a procedure called a vasectomy that could fix the problem, but that it was expensive. "A less costly alternative," said the doctor, "is to go home, get a cherry bomb, fireworks are legal in Kentucky, light it, put it in a beer can, then hold the can up to your ear and count to 10. The Kentuckian said to the doctor, "I may not be the smartest tool in the shed, but I don't see how putting a cherry bomb in a beer can next to my ear is going to help me." "Trust me," said the doctor. So the man went home, lit a cherry bomb, and put it in a beer can. He held the can up to his ear and began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at which point he paused, placed the beer can between his legs, and continued counting on his other hand. This procedure also works in Tennessee, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, parts of Georgia, Missouri, West Virginia, and all of Washington, D.C. A blind guy sits down in a diner and says to the waiter, "I'm sorry, but I'm blind and can't read the menu, so just bring me a dirty fork, I'll smell it, and order from there." The waiter picks up a greasy fork and hands it to the blind guy. The blind guy puts the fork to his nose, breathes deep, and says, "Ah, that's what I'll have. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes." The waiter can't believe it, and he goes and tells his wife Joan, who's the cook. The next day the blind guy walks in and the waiter says, "I'll get you a dirty fork." He gets a dirty fork and hands it to the blind guy. The blind guy smells it and says, "That smells great. I'll take the macaroni and cheese with broccoli." The waiter thinks the blind guy is bullshitting with him, so the next day when the blind guy walks in, he goes into the kitchen and says to his wife, "Joan, rub this fork on your crotch." She does it, and then he goes out and hands it to the blind guy. The blind guy puts the fork to his nose, takes a deep whiff, and says, "Are you kidding me? I didn't know Joan worked here." Earl walked into a drugstore in Kentucky and asked to talk to a male pharmacist. The woman he was talking to said that she was the only pharmacist, and as she and her sister owned the store, there were no male employees. She then asked if she could help him. Earl said that it was something that he would be much more comfortable discussing with a male pharmacist. The lady pharmacist assured him that she was completely professional and whatever it was that he needed to discuss, he could be confident that she would treat him with a high level of professionalism. Earl then agreed and began by saying, "This is tough for me to discuss, but I get erections every day that last more than 4 hours. It causes me a lot of problems and severe embarrassment, and I was wondering what you could give me for it." The pharmacist said, "Just a minute. I'll talk to my sister." When she returned, she said, "We discussed it at length, and this is the absolute best we can do. We can give you 1/3 ownership in the store, a company pickup truck, a king-size bed, and $3,000 a month in living expenses." One morning, the young house servant walked into the bathroom holding a mop, ready to start his daily cleaning. But as he gently pushed the door open, he stopped in his tracks. The lady of the house was in the shower, completely uncovered. Stunned, he quickly turned his head and blushed. "Ma'am," he stammered, "please finish quickly. I need to clean the bathroom." Without missing a beat, the lady called out from behind the curtain, "After the way your boss licked me all over last night, it doesn't need cleaning till next month." A young guy from Idaho moves to Florida and goes to a big everything-under-one-roof department store looking for a job. The manager says, "Do you have any sales experience?" The kid says, "Yeah, I was a vacuum salesman back in Idaho." Well, the boss was unsure, but he liked the kid and figured he'd give him a shot, so he gave him the job. "You start tomorrow. I'll come down after we close and see how you did." His first day on the job was rough, but he got through it. After the store was locked up, the boss came down to the sales floor. "How many customers bought something from you today?" The kid frowns and looks at the floor and mutters, "1." The boss says, "Just 1? Our salespeople average sales to 20 to 30 customers a day." "That will have to change, and soon, if you'd like to continue your employment here. We have very strict standards for our sales force here in Florida. 1 sale a day might have been acceptable in Idaho, but you're not on the farm anymore, son." The kid took his beating but continued to look at his shoes, so the boss felt kind of bad for chewing him out on his first day. He asked, semi-sarcastically, "So, how much was your 1 sale for?" The kid looks up at his boss and says, $101,237.65. The boss, astonished, says, $101,237.65? What the heck did you sell? The kid says, "Well, first, I sold him some new fish hooks. Then I sold him a new fishing rod to go with his new hooks. Then I asked him where he was going fishing, and he said down the coast. So I told him he was going to need a boat. So we went down to the boat department, and I sold him a twin-engine Chris Craft. Then he said he didn't think his Honda Civic would pull it, so I took him down to the automotive department and sold him that 4x4 Expedition." The boss said, "A guy came in here to buy a fish hook, and you sold him a boat and a truck?" The kid said, "No, the guy came in here to buy tampons for his wife, and I said, 'Dude, your weekend's shot. You might as well go fishing.'" Two very active seniors, Jacob, age 92, and Mary, age 89, living in the Villages, are all excited about their decision to get married. They go for a stroll to discuss the wedding, and on the way they pass a drugstore. Jacob suggests they go in. Jacob addresses the man behind the counter. "Are you the owner?" The pharmacist answers, "Yes." Jacob says, "We're about to get married. Do you sell heart medication?" The pharmacist, "Of course we do." Jacob, "How about medicine for circulation?" Pharmacist, "All kinds." Jacob, "Medicine for rheumatism?" Pharmacist, "Definitely." Jacob, "How about suppositories and medicine for impotence?" Pharmacist, "You bet." Jacob, "Medicine for memory problems, arthritis, and Alzheimer's?" Pharmacist, "Yes, a large variety. The works." Jacob, "What about vitamins, sleeping pills, Geritol, and antidotes for Parkinson's disease?" Pharmacist, "Absolutely." Jacob, "Everything for heartburn and indigestion?" Pharmacist, "We sure do." Jacob, "You sell wheelchairs and walkers and canes?" Pharmacist, "All speeds and sizes." Jacob, "Adult diapers?" Pharmacist, "Sure, how can I help you?" Jacob, "We'd like to use this store as our bridal registry." Mike walks into a bar and sees Pat sitting at the end of the bar with a great big smile on his face. Mike says, "Pat, what are you so happy for?" "Well, Mike, I have to tell you. Yesterday I was out waxing my boat, just waxing my boat, and a redhead came up to me. Tits out to here, Mike. Tits out to here. She says, 'Can I have a ride in your boat?' I said, 'Sure, you can have a ride in my boat.' So I took her way out in the lake, Mike. I turned off the key and I said, 'It's either screw or swim.' She couldn't swim, Mike. She couldn't swim." The next day, Mike walks into a bar and sees Pat sitting at the end of the bar with an even bigger smile on his face. Mike says, "What are you happy about today, Pat?" "Well, Mike, I have to tell you. Yesterday, I was out waxing my boat, just waxing my boat, and a beautiful blonde came up to me. Tits out to here, Mike. Tits out to here." She said, "Can I have a ride in your boat?" I told her, "Sure, you can have a ride in my boat." So I took her way out in the lake, Mike, way out much further than the last one. I turned off the key and I said, "It's either screw or swim." She couldn't swim, Mike. She couldn't swim. A couple days pass, and Mike walks into a bar and sees Pat down there crying over his beer. Mike says, "Pat, what are you so sad for?" "Well, Mike, I have to tell you. Yesterday I was out waxing my boat, just waxing my boat, and the most desirable brunette came up to me, tits way out to here, Mike. Tits way out to here. She says, 'Can I have a ride in your boat?' So I said, 'Sure, you can have a ride in my boat.' So I took her way out in the lake, Mike, way out, much further than the last two. I turned off the key and looked at her tits and said, 'It's either screw or swim.' Well, she pulled down her pants and she had a pecker, Mike. She had this great big pecker. And I can't swim, Mike. I can't swim." An elderly gentleman goes for a checkup. After his exam, the doctor said to the old fella, "You appear to be in good health. Do you have any medical concerns you would like to ask me about?" "In fact, I do," said the old man. "After I have sex, I am usually hot and sweaty, and then, after I have it with her the second time, I am usually cold and chilly." After examining the old man's elderly wife, the doctor said, "Everything appears to be fine. Do you have any medical concerns that you would like to discuss with me?" The lady replied that she had no questions or concerns, but the doctor then said to her, "Your husband had an unusual concern. He claims that he is usually hot and sweaty after having sex with you the first time and then cold and chilly after the second time. Do you know why?" "Oh, that crazy old bastard," she replied. "That's because the first time is usually in August and the second time is in January." As a trucker stops at a red light, a blonde catches up. She jumps out of her car, runs up to his truck, and knocks on the door. The trucker lowers the window and she says, "Hi, my name is Heather and you're losing some of your load." The trucker ignores her and proceeds down the street. When the truck stops for another red light, the girl catches up again. She jumps out of her car, runs up, and knocks on the door. Again, the trucker lowers the window. As if they have never spoken, the blonde says brightly, "Hi, my name is Heather, and you are losing some of your load." Shaking his head, the trucker ignores her again and continues down the street. At the third red light, the same thing happens again. All out of breath, the blonde gets out of her car, runs up, and knocks on the truck door. The trucker lowers the window. Again she says, "Hi, my name is Heather, and you are losing some of your load." When the light turns green, the trucker revs up and races to the next light. When he stops this time, he hurriedly gets out of the truck and runs back to the blonde's car. He knocks on her window, and as she lowers it, he says, "Hi, my name is Kevin. It's winter in Michigan, and I'm driving the salt truck." 3 bulls heard via the grapevine that the rancher was going to bring another bull onto the ranch, and the prospect raised a discussion among them. The first bull says, "Boys, we all know I've been here 5 years. Once we settled our differences, we agreed on which 100 of the cows would be mine. Now, I don't know where this newcomer is going to get his cows, but I ain't giving him any of mine." The second bull says, "That pretty much says it for me, too. I've been here 3 years and have earned my right to the 50 cows we've agreed are mine. I'll fight him till I run him off or kill him, but I'm keeping all my cows." The third bull says, "I've only been here a year, and so far you guys have only let me have 10 cows to take care of. I may not be as big as you fellows yet, but I am young and virile, so I simply must keep all my cows." They had just finished their big talk when an 18-wheeler pulled up in the middle of the pasture with only one animal in it, the biggest son of another bull these guys had ever seen. At 4,700 pounds, each step he took toward the ground strained the steel ramp to the breaking point. The first bull says, "Ahem. You know, it's actually been quite some time since I really felt I was doing all my cows justice anyway. I think I can spare a few for our new friend." The second bull says, "I'll have plenty of cows to take care of if I just stay on the opposite end of the pasture from him. I'm certainly not looking for an argument." They look over at their young friend, the third bull, and find him pawing the dirt, shaking his horns and snorting up a storm. The first bull says, "Son, let me give you some advice real quick. Let him have some of your cows and live to tell about it." The third bull says, "Heck, he can have all my cows. I'm just making sure he knows I'm a bull." In a rural program for farmers, a female TV reporter seeking the main cause of mad cow disease arranged for an interview with a Mississippi farmer who may have some theories on the matter. The female reporter: "I am here to collect information on the possible sources of mad cow disease. Can you offer any reason for this disease?" The farmer stared at the reporter and said, "Do you know that a bull mounts a cow only once a year?" Reporter, obviously embarrassed: "Well, sir, that's a new piece of information, but what's the relation between this phenomenon and mad cow disease?" Farmer: "And, madam, do you know that we milk a cow twice a day?" Reporter: "Sir, this is really valuable information, but what about getting to the point?" Farmer: "I am getting to the point, madam. Just imagine if I was playing with your tits twice a day, and only screwing you once a year. Wouldn't you go mad?" The TV interview was never aired. I was observing a woman in the grocery store with a 3-year-old girl in her basket. As they passed the cookie section, the little girl asked for cookies, and her mother told her, "No." The little girl immediately began to whine and fuss, and the mother said quietly, "Now, Julie, we just have half of the aisles left to go through. Don't be upset. It won't be long now." Soon they came to the candy aisle, and the little girl began to shout for candy. When told she couldn't have any, she began to cry. The mother said, There, Julie. Don't cry. Only 2 more aisles to go, and then we'll be checking out." When they got to the checkout stand, the little girl immediately began to clamor for gum and burst into a terrible tantrum upon discovering there'd be no gum purchased. The mother said serenely, "Julie, we'll be through this checkout stand in 5 minutes, and then you can go home and have a nice nap." I followed them out to the parking lot and stopped the woman to compliment her. "I couldn't help noticing how patient you were with little Julie," I began. The mother replied, "I'm Julie. My little girl's name is Tammy."